everyone. I'm sorry that I'm a little bit late, and I do apologize for having to move yesterday's live event to today. We were having some difficulties and just thought it would be better to switch it to today. So welcome to my Facebook Live event. We're about halfway through the month. Maybe a little bit more than halfway through our Facebook Live events, but I have really enjoyed these events, and I hope that you have too. Today, actually, let me introduce myself first for the folks that are joining us for the first time. I am author and speaker Sarah R. Turnquist, coming to you from Middle Tennessee. It's a little chilly here today. The weather is playing games with us, I guess. It's warm one day, it's cold the next. I have heard that it's snowing a little bit further into town. Who knows what's going on? Having some pop-ups on my screen, sorry. I am a multi-published clean historical romance author. And today I will be sharing with you about my novella. Those of you that have been with me know I'm a little weirded out about this screen. It's a mirror view, so it's just a little strange for me. But Leaving Waverly, it's actually the first novella that I wrote. So writing a novella is, let me hold this up a little bit longer. Writing a novella is a little bit different than writing a novel. You would think it's just shorter. So it's just, that's the difference. Well, hey, Bethany. It is shorter, but that means you take a story that you normally spread out over, I normally spread it out over 85,000 words and condense it down, but I still want my readers to get all the goodness that they would find in that 80,000 some odd word book. I want them to get all the feels. I want them to get some action. I want them to get tension. I want them to get the growth of the relationship and all that condensed down into 20 to 40,000 words. Hey, Nikki. Thank you. Nikki's commenting about the cover, and please do feel free to comment in the comment section as we go along. Leaving Waverly actually is a cover designed by me. And that has a little bit of an interesting story behind it. I am not a graphic designer, but I wanted to create a novella that would be a giveaway for people signing up for my email newsletter. And so since it started out as a giveaway, I really wasn't wanting to put money into it, or a lot of money into it initially. So I thought I'd try my hand at designing the cover, and it turned out, I thought, pretty well. So the cover stuck with it, and it is available for, you can buy it on ebook or on paperback on Amazon, or if you would like the ebook for free, you can sign up for my email newsletter. My website is sarahTurnquist.com, and it's /list, sarahTurnquist.com/list is where you can sign up for my newsletter, and you'll get a free e-copy of Leaving Waverly. So there it is. The cover does have the main, we're going to wrestle around here, has the main character Claire Crawford on it. She is a Southern belle. And this novella takes place just after the Civil War. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. And Waverly is a little town, or a fair-sized town, smallish town, in Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, where I am from and where I live. So I thought it fit well with the title, and I thought it suited the setting that I needed for the story. So when I went to write this novella, I did want to set it in Middle Tennessee. Now, the cover does not have the tagline, but the tagline is, Disillusioned by war and prejudice, can this Southern belle trust in love? So we're going to do the bookstore maneuver. Those of you that have been with me before know what that is. I'll flip it over and read the back cover copy. Claire Crawford is nothing she should be. Disillusioned by the war between the states and her own experience with the slaves on her father's plantation, she longs for something more. Under the control of her parents, there is not much room for anything but submission. Still, she dares to defy them and reach out to a sharecropper's family on her father's land. The war changed Henry Garrett, and he has plans of going beyond his father's humble farm. He will do whatever it takes to make those dreams come true. Nothing will stand in his way until he meets her. Drawn to the Southern belle he would rather despise, soon he is caught up in a situation not of his own making. How much is too much for the one he loves? Dare he sacrifice his dream? Intrigued yet? So let's talk a little bit about the origin and the spark behind the story. For those of you that have been with me before on one of these live events, you know that for me, when I write a story, I take the love story and a historical event or place or time period and kind of merge those together to create the whole story, the whole manuscript. So the initial spark actually came from my desire to write a prequel for Hope and Cripple Creek. That died pretty quickly because I just decided I wanted to write something fresh. So I was partially inspired by this area that I live in, knowing that Waverly was here in Middle Tennessee, looks very similar to where I am, and had the right sound for the title. I knew I wanted to set it on a Southern plantation right after the Civil War because there's just a lot going on historically during that time. After slavery was abolished, there's this struggle of what happens to these former slaves in the South. As it was mentioned in the back cover copy, some of them become sharecroppers on former plantation land. Some of them stay in the plantation homes, but they're now servants and they are paid. And some of them move. Some of them go farther north. There's just a lot that is happening in this area. What are the plantation owners doing now that they don't have these former slaves that they were not, of course, having to pay? There were also tenant farmers at that time. So what is happening with the tension between the sharecroppers and the tenant farmers? They were poor. These tenant farmers were poor farmers at that time. And then you had the traditional farmer who wasn't as well off as the plantation owners, trying to make their own way in the world. So there's really a lot going on in this area. So this is the climate where I set the story. Sorry, my notes are a little crazy right now. Also, there was little educational opportunity for these former slaves, but there was a great desire to learn to read and write. So in this climate is where I set the story. I think I've said that already a couple times. Sorry. So I have this idealistic Southern belle who has this backstory where the only real tenderness and love that she's known is from the nanny, of course, a slave in the home that cared for her and raised her because her mother is having. I'll have to read the novella to kind of know a little bit more about what's going on between her and Claire and her mother. And Claire also got into this really loving relationship, compassionate relationship with the nanny's daughter as well. So this is kind of in Claire's backstory and goes into who her character is. And now that she's grown, she has this soft spot for the sharecroppers and their families and this tension of their loss of educational their lack of educational opportunity. So she is sneaking off to teach the children how to read And this is something that would seriously enrage her father if he were ever to find out. So that's some of the setting of how the story starts. This is happening before the story starts, and this is really, I'm repeating myself a lot. This is this is some of the tension that's already in place when we walk onto page 1. So I'm going to go ahead and read an excerpt and hopefully gather my wits a little bit. Okay, Leaving Waverly. I'm reading an excerpt out of chapter 2. I always tell you where it is, even though it doesn't mean a whole lot to those of you that haven't read the book. Chapter 2. See the dog run. Good, Claire cheered. Isaac had finally read his first sentence, and she couldn't be happier. All their hard work was proving worthwhile. Now you try it, Millie. See the dog run. The little girl beamed at Claire. She hadn't so much as glanced at the book. Claire gave her a sweet smile. Let's try the next sentence. She pointed to the words below the sentence Isaac had read. Millie stared at the page, moved the book closer to her face, but could not produce anything. Scooting closer to her, Claire leaned over. Let's sound it out together. Millie nodded. Claire started. The small girl pushed her tongue against her teeth to replicate the sound. The k. Millie continued, following Claire's lead. Cat, ra. The door to the tiny house flung open. Millie and Isaac's mother was on her feet in a moment. Was she prepared to protect her children? What manner of instinct was that? Claire was unable to tear her eyes away. In moments, the small space was invaded by 2 men carrying Mr. Amos. One man was black, another sharecropper perhaps. The other was none other than Mr. Henry Garrett. Claire had nowhere to hide. How to escape discovery? She was trapped. Mrs. Amos cleared the dining table, and the 2 men set Mr. Amos upon it. Only then did Claire take notice of his leg. It bled horribly. She pulled the children to her, pressing their faces into her skirt, and turned her head. What had happened to him? Mrs. Amos took charge immediately. A blade? She leaned over her husband's leg, already a cloth in her hand. His axe got away from him, Henry said. I think it's bad. Mrs. Amos nodded. Henry and the other man took a step back. Only then did Henry look in her direction. His eyes caught hers and held. Did he wonder what she was doing here? Could he put the pieces together? Of course he would. But would he tell her father? His jaw set, his mouth a thin line. He did not look pleased. She dropped her head. There was no way she could continue to face him. Miss Crawford, could you take the children outside? Mrs. Amos's eyes were on her. She nodded. Keeping her hands on the shoulders of the children, she maneuvered them around the opposite side of the table from Henry and out the door. Once they were out and in the open, she breathed deeply. Had she been holding her breath? Millie and Isaac clung to her skirt, but soon loosened their hold. May we play? Isaac looked up at her. Claire gazed into his pleading eyes. What did she expect? They didn't understand. Perhaps they did, and simply wanted to distract themselves. Either way, it was a good idea, so she nodded. They took off. She found a slab of wood nearby that served as a makeshift bench and all but collapsed on it. What was she going to do? Her father's angry face flashed in front of her mind's eye. He would not like what she had been up to these past couple of weeks. The fact that she'd been spending time with his family would be bad enough. But teaching the children? It would surely enrage him. The door creaked. Claire jerked her head around as Henry emerged. She turned away, but that didn't stop him from stepping toward her. His presence hung over her. Are you all right? His voice seemed so caring, so tender. She shifted to look at him once more. When she caught his eyes, they were as sympathetic as his voice had been. I am, she let out a deep breath. A bit shaken, but I am well. He nodded, watching the children running in the field. I hope he keeps that leg. Claire nodded. What happened to the little family if Mr. Amos lost his leg and wasn't able to farm? What if he had bled out in the field? How fortunate that Henry and the other sharecropper had helped him. Thank you. Claire's voice was weak. Even she heard that it was so. His eyes were on her. For what? For helping him, for bringing him home. Henry nodded. I'm just glad I was nearby. His eyes drifted to the ground. Claire hated that her thoughts turned to her own problems in that moment. Would Henry speak with her father? What did he think of her teaching the children? Probably what any man would, that it was ridiculous, even vile. Closing her eyes, Claire had to ask. She couldn't not ask. Please, don't tell my father. His eyes were on her then. She felt them boring into her. Dare she meet them? His eyes were on her then. I just said that. After several moments of silence, she did. His brown eyes were deep. They warmed her and put her on edge at the same time. A fluttering filled her stomach. He opened his mouth. The door opened, and the sharecropper stepped out. Henry shifted his focus to the man. Is it bad? The man nodded. But Mrs. Amos has cleaned it and stitched him up. We can only hope for the best now. He needs medicine, Claire interjected. Henry and the sharecropper stared at her, and Henry's eyes were sad. Of course, Mr. Amos couldn't afford a doctor. How could Claire be so thoughtless? None of these men could afford that kind of care, but her father could. Perhaps I could tell my father. Henry held up a hand. Mrs. Amos has done what she can. We have to wait. Was Henry worried about her? About her father finding out about her close association with the sharecropper family? Did he truly care? Her father could be a hard man, but surely he would see what was right, that Mr. Amos needed that help. Still, as she faced Henry, she decided to trust his judgment. So there's our excerpt. Just for those interested in this period, there is a mention, or there is a piece of the story that talks about the Underground Railroad in this book. I am absolutely fascinated by that piece of history and of the brave folks that took part in the Underground Railroad. This book is actually next in line to be converted into an audiobook. I have several books that are available as audiobooks. I probably don't have to tell you that audiobooks are really becoming more popular right now. And I have been able to work with a fabulous narrator. Her name is Becky Bravum, and she is just an amazingly talented voice actress. She impresses me over and over every time that I listen to one of the audiobooks that she's done. My Convenient Risk series, which I'll be featuring in the upcoming Facebook Live events. Off to War will be coming out any day now on audiobook, and I'm currently proofing the audio for Trail of Fears, which we'll be featuring next Facebook Live this coming Thursday. So just in a couple days, we'll be learning more about Trail of Fears. Hope in Cripple Creek is also available on audiobook, but that's with another voice artist, Kimberly Worthy. I'm pretty sure that's the name of the voice artist. So that book is also available on audiobook if you prefer audiobook. So now it's time for the giveaway. And for those of you that have not been with us for a giveaway before, here's how it will work. I will pose a question and invite you to answer in the comment section. We will collect responses in the comment section for the next 24 hours. So the time right now is 2:18. So we will collect responses from the comment section for the giveaway until 2:18 tomorrow, which is April the 15th, 2020. Right? My dates are right? Awesome. Got my help over there. Keeping track of it for me. You can continue to comment after that, but as far as collecting responses for the giveaway, it will only be through 2:18 p.m. Central Standard Time on April 15th. All right, the winner will receive a paperback copy of Leaving Waverly and a $10 Amazon gift card. So here you go. Here's the question. What is the first book you remember reading? So the first book you remember reading. And I will answer for you as well. The first book that I remember reading is Little House in the Big Woods. I'm sure I was reading smaller books before then, but that's the first chapter book I remember reading. I was really an avid reader when I was a kid. I still am, but I was one of those kids that like read all the time, like stayed up late. My sister and I shared a room when we were kids, and she would be snoozing and I would be there with a little flashlight, and reading all night long. But I think my journey started with the Laura Ingalls Wilder set. I had a box set, and I started with Little House in the Big Woods. So what about you? What is the first book you remember reading? So I will let you answer that, and I will be back on Thursday to talk about Trail of Fears, and I hope to see you then. Thanks for joining me. Bye.